So as you can see, it's going to be slightly different than yesterday evening. We're going to have them working together, and we've got Yashoda on the other side. So I'm going to hand it over to him. Yashoda thinks he can take them on. I'll let him go. I'm going to go.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, so I wouldn't dare to do that. So we're going to do something a bit different to yesterday. I was thinking this is quite unique actually, because we have 3 exemplary devotees in 3 different ashrams. So quite a unique thing. So I've curated some questions I thought we could just kind of start with to just get some context. And then I'm going to open it up at the end for just Q&A for everyone. So if you've got questions, write them down, remember them, and we'll get a chance to do that later. So based on that, if Naveen Krishna Prabhu, I could ask you to start, and we'll ask all 3 of you to comment on this. Why did you choose your respective ashram? And if you could just briefly say what's the purpose of that ashram. What's the purpose of the ashram? Yeah. Why did you choose your respective ashram? And if you could briefly tell us what's the purpose of that ashram, what you feel is the purpose of the ashram.
Why I chose the ashram? I think obviously there are material reasons and spiritual reasons, but to focus on the kind of the Krishna conscious perspective on it, or from my perspective limited, I think I felt in consultation with my seniors that where they suggested especially my spiritual master, suggested I might best be able to contribute to ISKCON in terms of the types of services that he felt that I should be doing, would better be facilitated in the Grihastha ashram, because it was involving engaging with the material world. So that was the reason, and purpose, I think you said, was the second one. I guess for me, lots of different purposes stated in scripture. I think they're all really, really relevant around the fact that the Grihastha ashram is the ashram where children come into Krishna consciousness, are given a special opportunity to be raised in Krishna consciousness. So there's that aspect. Another aspect is, I think, the importance of the Grihastha ashram in contributing to, like, most of us will be in the Grihastha ashram, just statistically. And so being able to maintain the ISKCON as an institution, and to be able to further our objectives in a way which involves contact with the material energy that's not appropriate for either the sannyasi or the brahmachari ashram. And then, of course, there's like support, like charity and all of those other kind of elements to it. But from a principle perspective, it's about, one time, just to finish, Shiva Maharaj gave the example of how the Ramakrishna mission, and Prabhupada was quoting, and how they became successful and other things. And one of the things he was mentioning was that as people who are experienced in the material world take that experience and apply it in supporting the movement, then that can be a nice asset. So, yeah.
Yeah, for me, as I was mentioning, I don't know if I chose this ashram. I think of the 4 ashrams, actually Sannyasa ashram in the ISKCON we live in today is not an ashram that you choose, actually. It's an ashram that you're encouraged to enter for similar reasons to what Naveen Prabhu mentioned in terms of service, impact, giving. So generally when you're living as a brahmachari, to want to try and become a sannyasi or to have that aspiration, it can be tinged with a lot of, maybe not so helpful or healthy things. And therefore, generally a brahmachari is just happy to live as a brahmachari. But then if guides, mentors, other spiritual leaders feel that it would be beneficial for someone to then take another step, then on their encouragement we do it. So I think for me, and Braj Bihari will speak about the Brahmacharya ashram, there are many reasons why we accepted a life of renunciation. And those are the same pretty much with your Brahmacharya or sannyasi. But sannyas is something you take on the encouragement of others. And I think that's an important principle for everyone here who's thinking about an ashram and how to move forward in that way, that guidance and advice is very, very important. And just one final thing I'll say on sannyas ashram, which I think really resonated with me, is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, he's taking sannyas and he's giving the quote. He said, "I gave up the small world of family life to embrace the whole world as my family." So I guess that for me was very inspirational, to try to embrace the whole world as your family and try to live a life of contribution to others. So that, some thoughts.
So there are two things. One is the purpose of the Brahmacharya ashram and why I joined. Regarding purpose, it's traditionally a Brahmacharya ashram was from the age of 5 to 25. But most of us joined after 25. So, and so then our purpose of the Brahmacharya ashram becomes similar to the purpose of the sannyas ashram. Traditionally, it's not like that. Traditionally, you are under the, you're just given everything to the guru, you're serving. But here, the dynamics are different because you are 25, you've seen the world, you worked outside, and then you want to serve. So basically, the purpose of the Brahmacharya ashram in the modern context is to serve in general and to preach and to spread the Krishna consciousness movement. And why I joined, there were two things that happened with me. First was, I grew up with my grandparents in a small devotional town called Udupi, where there is Madhvacharya's Krishna temple. My grandfather was a temple priest. And my first 10 years I spent there and eating prasadam in the temple, always being in the temple courtyard. So then one of my uncles was there, he was really disturbed, that this boy is going to get spoiled. He's just in the temple eating prasadam and not studying. So then he called my father and said, "You take him back." Because my father was in a very senior government post he was traveling all over India. So then my father took me with him to Mumbai, and then 25 years and 15 years later I came back and I joined the temple, ISKCON temple. So that when I first time came to the temple, all my childhood memories came back. It was as if I was in that pure atmosphere and everything. So that childhood impression is what actually led me to join the temple. Because the first time I came to ISKCON temple, I went back home, I just stopped watching TV, I just stopped. It was like nothing seemed to attract me. And then I was like, what has happened? And then slowly, within 6 months, I joined. So that was one. And second was, I was also very disturbed during my college days because I was a Hindu, so-called. And I used to be disturbed by the evangelists and the missionaries and the jihadists. And they would confront, I was part of one political wing also. And then I didn't have answers, but I had passion. And when I came to ISKCON, I had all the answers. So then I thought, wow, I just want to join them because I was driven by a strong desire to preach and defend the Vedic culture, promote the Vedic culture and answer these people. So I think these two reasons helped me join. Hare Krishna.
And Raja Bihari Prabhu, if I can ask a follow-up question. So those of you who've read Raja Bihari Prabhu's book, Cricket in the Monastery, was there ever a time you thought about leaving the ashram?
So far, to be honest, I never got a desire to leave the ashram. I mean, I won't lie about it, but it's not even once I thought of leaving the ashram. But I must confess, I did feel lonely at times in the past. I mean, I won't deny that. Because I guess companionship is an universal need, whether you are Lord Brahma or a small ant. So I guess, but then I made peace with myself and I got journaling, I got deity worship, Shaligram Sheva. So overall, and preaching, seeing people's lives change, it's so satisfying. So I guess every ashram has its challenges. Even Grahasthas, they also have their challenges. So Brahmacharya ashram also has its challenges. So far, by Krishna's mercy, I never felt like leaving the ashram. so far. And but yeah, there are moments when you feel, well, who's there? Where are we, and what will happen? But then that's okay. That's why I said yesterday that I can't always be happy, but I'm peaceful, I'm at peace, because Krishna makes up for everything. And Krishna loves to play hide and seek. It's like Krishna is there and then he's not there. He's there, and the deity worship is fully satisfying, and then when you are alone, and then you are like, what's happening? And then again you come back to Krishna. And that struggle is very sweet. We think Krishna consciousness is sweet like kheer. It's not sweet like kheer. It's like we have in India crackjack biscuit, which is thoda khatta, thoda meetha. But it is irresistible. So Krishna consciousness relationship with Krishna is irresistible, but it's not sweet like a gulab jamun. It's crispy, sweet, salty and sweet like that. It's like that. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. It's too soon. So that leads us on to a question for Naveen Krishna Prabhu, which is, what do you feel are, given that majority of the devotees here are in the Grihastha ashram or looking to enter it, what would you say are the key challenges for young Grihasthas or people looking to enter the ashram today?
Key challenges for those looking to enter, yeah? Or in it? I think a few key challenges come to mind. One is that in the Brahmachari ashram, there's a clear line of authority. There's a clear structure. You're accountable. There's somebody, In the Grihastha ashram, it's a bit it's a bit vague. Like, who are you answerable to? Who's holding you to account? Who's seeing if you're waking up in the morning doing your rounds? So that whole element is gone. So you can space out or coast for a long time and turn up to the temple and with the dhoti, kurta, tilak, etc. Sorry, but but go like completely unnoticed. But so I think I'll be short. One point is accountability. There's no accountability. You have to create your own accountability. You have to be proactive about accepting accountability. Second thing is there is a challenge about the Grihastha ashram by its own dynamics can make one quite selfish or self-centered. Keshav Maharaj was speaking about this point about giving up one family to accept the world as one family. That's the expanding of one's consciousness or awareness about one's area of responsibility. And Srila Prabhupada comments that that's the role of a leader, to expand one's domain of responsibility. So Grihastha ashram, you can become very self-centered, very selfish. It's about me, my wife, my kids, my immediate, whatever, right? So and you can get really caught up in that. And you can forget Srila Prabhupada's mission. Other than giving your £1,000 a year to the temple as your patronship, going to the temple to, do a little bit of service here and there, but it's not your core mission in life. What is your core mission in life? Otherwise, what happens is, as a Grihastha, you become like a darshan crowd. Come to the temple, come for darshan, put some money in the box, whatever, right? So, and you may even do some sadhana, but what is your purpose in life? So I think there's all these potentials, challenges around that, and also with children, there's the challenge around raising, from my perspective, such an absolutely critical element of Grihastha ashram, raising children in Krishna consciousness, and the challenge of raising a child in Krishna consciousness in this age is not insignificant, and I think those are key ones that come to mind. I think the role of, I'll just say this just because I have the opportunity to say it, I think the role of the mother in that service is, in my opinion, the most important service in the world, bar none. And I mean that because it's a very underestimated and undervalued role. But the raising of the child from conception to at least 5, I don't see that as, what more can you do for the world like that? Anyway, I'll stop. Who's going?
Thank you. That was lovely. And following on from that, Kesha Maharaj, if, once you're practicing for a long period of time, that honeymoon phase in Krishna consciousness dwindles, the complexities of life come, particularly in Grihastha ashram, they come quite thick and fast. And the taste for Krishna consciousness can go. So what would you say is the main reason that taste can leave, and what can we do to get it back?
It's explained that taste may leave for a few reasons. One is obviously offenses, so insensitivity towards other people, insensitivity towards Krishna, insensitivity towards how we practice the process and how we conduct ourselves in the practice of Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is so much about sensitivity. So much of our, if you look at the idea of aparad or offense, all offense has a root in insensitivity. So really, Krishna consciousness will only progressively work if we learn to be sensitive towards everyone and everything we do. Therefore, Prabhupada said, first become conscious, then become Krishna conscious. So one of the main things is because we are insensitive towards these different things, then we commit offenses, and then that creates a distance in our ability to really experience Krishna. And then the other flip side of it, which is related, is mechanistic practice, ritualistic practice. Why did we spend just 2 days looking at this concept of becoming comfortable with being uncomfortable? Is because that's the whole thing which breaks us out of this kind of robotic, mechanistic, ritualistic, religious practice of Krishna conscious. As soon as we start becoming more religious than spiritual, then we're in a danger zone of really getting into a dryness in our relish of the process. And so if I would say what keeps Krishna consciousness fresh, it's number one, always be sensitive in how you conduct yourself in a community, how you practice the process, how you relate to others, how you relate to your family. Once I was giving a class and I asked everyone to put, did you have an argument with anyone last week? And some people put their hands up. And then I said, did you have an argument with a devotee last week? And then some people put their hands up, and I noticed one person put his hand up for the first. He said, and I looked at him, he said, yeah, I had an argument with my wife, but not a devotee. So it's interesting. He saw that, so that's interesting, because you can be living with devotees, with your own family, but if you're insensitive to them, again, that brings a distance. So anyway, point is, you lose taste in Krishna consciousness if you lack sensitivity, and you lose taste in Krishna consciousness if you become mechanical and religious more than spiritual, and therefore you always have to be endeavoring to do something more. What we did last year in Krishna consciousness is not enough anymore. It's not enough. We have to do more. And more doesn't necessarily mean doing more in quantity. We can do more in quality. We can do more in responsibility. We can do more in many different ways. But it has to be an evolving process. And this is a movement. A movement means there's movement.
Very well. Okay, this is a question for everyone. We can start with Rajabihari Prabhu if anyone wants to go first. What was the most profound and deepest moment in your Krishna consciousness? We're going deep, very quick. What was the most profound and deepest moment in your Krishna consciousness?
sorry. The occasions when you get deep conviction that Krishna does exist and Krishna does care. And I would say a few instances, like the first time I read Bhagavatam, like sometimes when I'm dry or I feel bored or I'm not inspired, I try to recall these moments when I got that, the glimpse or the taste in Krishna consciousness. So I remember the first time I read Bhagavatam, I was like, I didn't understand much, but I found a strong sense of shelter. So whenever I'm a little low, I hold on to Bhagavatam. So Bhagavatam, deity worship. And there have been occasions, there are some issues that happened, which I don't want to discuss in detail here, but some misunderstandings developed and relationship issues in the ashram and things like that. And I remember at that time when I took shelter of deities, when I did deity worship, I just found a strong sense of a reassurance that, it's all right. Krishna is there, that kind of reassurance. And that happened, when I look back, it's of course mercy, but when, as Maharaj very beautifully said yesterday and today, when we put ourselves in uncomfortable situations, we are in a situation to attract a lot of mercy. So I took up management seva, and I'm not at all a manager. And but I was forced, the authorities asked me to, and I went through a lot of suffering there, but I also got a lot of mercy. So my experience is whenever I've taken up challenges, I've got a lot of mercy. And deep experiences, exactly, I don't know what you mean, but yes, reassurance from, with chanting, for example, I've not got ecstasy in chanting, but I remember initially I used to chant because I thought I'll get some peace if I chant Hare Krishna. And now, I consciously work on getting some peace because I want to chant Hare Krishna. So there is a big shift that has happened. So I guess that's a deep experience. Initially for me chanting was a means. But now, I don't have great experience, great ecstasy in chanting, but I feel a strong sense of shelter. So like that, I guess these are all cumulatively, when you add all of them, I think they all constitute a deep experience. So that's it. Hare Krishna.
That's a really hard question. I think just because there's different aspects, as Prabhupada said, in terms of what's deep and profound. I can't really actually answer the question directly. I can just give some examples. One was my first recollection of a kind of a realization was when I came to Krishna consciousness originally, and I was reading all of Srila Prabhupada's books, and my sole intention, as I've said it before, my sole intention of reading Prabhupada's books was like I wanted to find a mistake, because I felt like if I could find a mistake, I could walk away from this and not have to worry about it. And falsification, there you go. Falsification. So I did it, and I was really quite. And then at the end of it, I had this kind of feeling. Obviously, I wasn't experiencing Krishna consciousness, but I did have this very strong feeling that, wait a minute, this is, maybe this is the truth. There is something very incontrovertible about this that you just cannot turn a blind eye to, because there's just too much evidence pointing in this direction that it must be worthy of investigation. For any, So anyway, that was like one. There's different, but just to, whatever.
I'll just say two things, maybe one specific one and one general thing. The specific one, I think, is when I was thinking of joining the ashram, then naturally that was a very emotional situation with the family, and I think I said to my parents on 3 different occasions that I was going to join, and it was very emotional, tears, the whole thing. And then I said, okay, no, I won't do it. And then on the third occasion, the devotees had told me to join, and that morning they had told me to do it. And I said, okay, I'll do it, but I'll do it tomorrow. They said, no, do it today. I said, but today's Mother's Day. They said, do it today. So anyway, on this particular day, I always remember it. And then I had this conversation with my parents. It was, I'm going. And then it was like very emotional, tears, everything. I went up to my room. And I was sitting in my room and I was assessing the situation. And I always remember this. It was like a crossroads in my life. And I was sitting up in my room and I was analyzing the situation. And then at one point, I just thought, Grihe Thakur, Vane Thakur, you can be Krishna conscious anywhere. I'll just stay at home. I'll keep them happy and you can be a good devotee at home. And you can. So I got up and I put my hand on the door to kind of go down and just tell them, okay, that's it, I'm not going to do it, I'll just stay. And then that was it, just close it right there and then. And then I got to the door and I was about to open it. And then the thought came to me, you know what? I've come this far. If I don't just go through with this, I think in the future I'll have regrets. I've come this far, let me just do it. And then at that moment, somehow in my mind, the conviction came, no, it's difficult, you're causing them pain, but in the future, even they will appreciate it. Let's try. And then I just wrote it out and I said no, and then I just left. And I think in that moment, I didn't realize the significance of it, but years later, I reflected back and I realized my life in that moment could have been so different had I made a different decision. And someone once said something to me, the pain of sacrifice is uncomfortable, but the pain of regret is unbearable. And at that moment, when I reflected back on that point, I realized in my life, I don't want to have any regrets. Whatever decisions, whatever mistakes, whatever things may happen, I must look back at my life and not have any regrets. And I concluded that we never regret the things we did do, generally, when we have a good motive. We always regret the things we didn't do. And so that was I think, a profound moment to just instill with me this kind of vision that never live your life in such a way that in the future you'll have regrets. And I think the second general one I would say is that my most magical, memorable, mystical, moving experiences in Krishna consciousness, by far, without any shadow of a doubt, have been while endeavoring to share Krishna consciousness with others. I've been to Vrindavan by Krishna's grace. I've been on the altar at the manor by Krishna's grace. I've been in the association of great saints by Krishna's grace. But I can say amongst all of these things, I've never experienced Krishna's presence as strongly and as powerfully as when we're trying to actually genuinely share Krishna consciousness with others. And therefore, I always try to live my life in such a way that there must be something I do every day. There must be something I do every day to try and help someone to find their spiritual journey. And in that way, every day becomes memorable, because I think that act of just being concerned about others are where the most profound spiritual experiences come.
This question is for Vrajabihari Prabhu. The three devotees have mentioned how, relationships and how we deal with other people are important, but, in practice, relationships are very difficult. So what would you say is the reason why we all struggle with keeping good relationships and why relationships are often so difficult?
I'll speak from the Brahmacharya ashram perspective. Relationships generally are difficult because we have an understanding of what is right, what is wrong, how a person should be. We operate from our own paradigms. We refuse to see how Krishna would see. Like, I'll give a simple example. I saw in my own ashram a relationship challenge between two devotees, and the issue was simply because of cultural differences and inability to accept that the other person is also dear to Krishna. When I can't see from Krishna's vision, then I'll always have relationship issue. How would Krishna see this person? Like, we had a Punjabi devotee. Punjabis are very expressive. And we have some South Indian Brahmins in our ashram. South Indian Brahmin is like, I come from South India, we consider dancing in kirtans as very low class. It's like, how can you dance, And Punjabis, for small occasion they jump and they dance. So then there is this kirtan going on in the Guru Puja. This Punjabi devotee pulls the South Indian devotee in the circle and gives him I'm so sorry. He pats him on the back and he slaps him very hard on the back. And he pulls him in and he forces him to dance and, twirls him and like that. And then everybody is laughing, dancing in the kirtan, and it seemed to be a very happy occasion. But later on, that South Indian devotee tells me that I felt so bad, what is he doing? So he avoids him because of the cultural differences. And this Punjabi devotee, when I confronted him, I said, why don't you be more sensitive to him? He said, Prabhu, I love him and I express my love in front of everyone. And the way I express love is, make fun of somebody in front of everyone. That's the way I express love. For the South Indian devotee, love meant talk to me alone. Don't make a scene. So the point I'm making is relationship issues happen because we can't understand. Everybody has a background. Everybody is coming from a certain cultural background or certain patterns, certain issues that we've gone through. So if we are just sensitive about that, and secondly, if we are also understanding that that person is dear to Krishna, then we'll be able to navigate through relationship challenges better. Like one more example I'll give. Like when I joined the ashram, there were 3 devotees in our ashram whom I was very scared of. And today when I look back, I laugh at myself because those 3 are my best friends. And they were seniors, like one of the temple presidents, he's always very grave. He speaks very little. And in the ashram we used to say, there is a very famous dialogue in a movie called Sholay, which was one of the top movies in Bollywood, that when the child is crying and the Gabbar Singh is the villain, so the mother tells the child, you sleep or this Gabbar Singh will come. So in our ashram we used to say, in the congregation when children are crying, the mothers tell their children, Shamanand Prabhu is going to come. So like that, we had one devotee who was very aggressive. He has a very angry face all the time. And he's 12 years senior to me. So when I joined the ashram, I would be scared of him. And my whole life changed one day when I got a severe backache. I had spondylitis issues then. And he walked up to me, he said, you guys are educated people, you can't take little austerity. And he just made some very sarcastic, nasty comment and he walked away. And that just confirmed my feeling that he's very bad, But then in 2 minutes he was back with an ointment. And he made me sit. And we generally don't take seva from seniors. We serve our seniors. And he was 12 years senior to me. And for 1 hour he was massaging me. And all the time he had a frown on his face. It's not that he was smiling. It's not that he was saying, I love you, But he was gently massaging my shoulder for 1 hour. And then he got me Mahaprasad the next day. And then I was like, and none of the time he's smiling. He's always like angry young man. So I realized, wait. I have some definition of love in my head. And if somebody doesn't fit into that definition, I think that person is unloving. But that's wrong. His definition, he's very loving devotee. You see, so I think relationship issues can be resolved if we understand and see that every devotee is uniquely serving Krishna. Like when my father passed away, I was in Badrinath and I was totally disoriented. I rushed back and there was a devotee in the ashram who never appreciates me. When I give, when we give good class, the congregation comes and appreciates. The brahmacharis, how they appreciate? Prabhu, great class, you finished on time. So they don't. And this devotee never, he never spoke to me appreciatively. But when my father passed away and I was in my hometown for 15 days, every day, morning and evening, he would call me. I mean, isn't that love? And every time he would ask me, so, how are you? You need anything? I mean, that was love. It's just that it was not fitting into my definition of love. So if we just change a little bit here in our head, then we'll see everybody is loving. Then we'll see all devotees are dear to Krishna. Then we'll see beauty, grace, we'll see love everywhere. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Okay, last question from me for Keshav Maharaj and Naveen Krishna Prabhu, and then we'll open it out for questions to everyone. What do you both feel is the greatest threat to spirituality in the world today? You can take a moment.
What do you mean in the world, or individual people's lives? In the world, the greatest threat.
Mine would probably be religion. Like misapplied, misdirected, hypocritical religion, because I feel it destroys faith in real religion or spirituality in a way that atheism can't. Because you can argue against atheism, but when somebody sees hypocrisy, for them to then take up spiritual practice, it's very difficult.
I would say a similar thing, but in a different way. I can't remember who it was. Maybe it was Martin Luther King or someone. He said, those who want peace in the world have to be as organized and intelligent as those who want war. And so I think the biggest threat to spirituality in the world is the lethargy, the laziness, the apathy of people who actually have the ability to help the world but don't do anything. Vaishnav means paradukha dukhi. So if you're apathetic to the world's suffering and you don't do anything, you are actually one of the biggest causes of the problem. More than apathy, there's sympathy. But sympathy means seeing how terrible the world is, having some compassion, but looking at it from a distance and not really engaging to then do something. That's better than apathy, but it doesn't cut it. We have to be empathetic. Empathetic means paradukha dukhi. We look at the world and we say, it's our duty. Prabhupada said, it's my duty. So I think instead of looking at all the terrible things going on in the world and saying, wow, it's terrible, what can you do? It's Kali Yuga, Prabhu. Devotees get into this Kali Yuga katha. Prabhu, it's really bad out there. Kali Yuga is... It's funny, Ridananda Maharaj gives this story. He said he was trying to convince Prabhupada how bad Kali Yuga had become. So he said, Prabhupada, there was a story in the paper yesterday that there's these Jewish monks and they're in their monastery. They're praying all day. They're so dedicated to God. And the newspaper was criticizing them that they're social parasites. Just see how terrible Kali Yuga is. They're saints. They're praying all day. Prabhupada said, the newspaper is right. They should go out there and they should do something. So Vidananda Maharaj said, okay. Prabhupada expected us to do something. So I think the biggest threat is our own selves, because we have it. And if we don't do something to share it, we can't blame anyone else, because the future is in our hands.
Hare Krishna. Shama Vallabh.
This is a question for Naveen Krishna. I noted that you mentioned that Grihastha life could get selfish. How can you make it selfless?
I mean, there's a natural tendency towards that. So I think the way to make it selfless are the reasons why we are recommended to engage in charity, hosting others, but also having children also forces you into selflessness, involuntary sacrifice sometimes. For generally, like when we have a selfish, egocentric perspective, when you have a child, they become the center. And more so, of course, for the mother, but also for the father. And then you realize through that you're not the center of the universe, and somebody else's needs are more important than yours. And that kind of training is quite helpful. But I personally think that's one thing, children, and giving in charity and hosting devotees, those natural things. But the other element for us as devotees in ISKCON, the consistent theme I feel across all the ashrams, because sometimes there's a tendency to think that, okay, if you want to give your life for Krishna, join the Brahmacharya ashram. That's a natural tendency, because it's true, like you're full-time in the temple, no real kind of opportunities unless you create them for diversion. But the thing is that I think the challenge for Grihasthas in ISKCON is to understand that our life is also supposed to be for the mission. Our life is also supposed to be to serve ISKCON. And, and I think through that process, just naturally being and opening yourself up to that possibility means that we will become less selfish, because we are involved in what the devotees in Saffron are speaking about, which is giving Krishna consciousness to others, not just serving ourselves.
Does Rasta Bihari?
Hare Krishna. It's another question for Naveen. So we understand that spiritual life should be practiced joyfully. I'm trying to understand what that means in the context of Grihastha ashram with young children. Like, is it moments of joy and when meant to hang on to those, or what does that mean? And for you, when you had young children, what was making your life joyful?
Obviously every experience of parenting is different. So Nilamani was at home since we had kids. So she was taking care of most of the the hard part of raising children, and I got most of the fun part. So for me, actually, with children, I found it a very joyful experience, just because they were easy kids, and I had a good time with it. But I guess to the point of your question around glimpses of joy or not, I think, as Braja Bihari Prabhu has been kind of showing, bringing us to this understanding that we know for a fact that hunting after happiness is never going to bring us the peace and satisfaction that we want. So that endeavor is not really where we're going to find it. I think where we do find it is in the same, perhaps, in all the ashrams, or for any devotee, is that in our personal connection, which we have to try and strive to maintain with Krishna through our own personal practice and sadhana, etc., in finding, and I guess this is where it's harder for grihasthas, in finding our contribution to ISKCON, in our contribution to the society, because then you feel like everything it's not separate from Krishna. And that's the one. If we feel as grihasthas that our lives are separate from Krishna, and the only time I'm in touch with Krishna is when I'm chanting my rounds or going to the temple, that's a problem, because then we become schizophrenic. Like we're living two lives which are incompatible. Whereas, that is, maybe that's like a key challenge for grihasthas. Like, how do you make your life, because if you're in the Brahmacharya ashram, Sannyasa ashram, there's no schizophrenia, there's no distance. Whereas here we're living one life outside, one life inside. So, but that's a consciousness psychological thing. Like it's about adjusting our consciousness to see that whatever I'm doing, and I'm not saying it's easy, but the endeavor towards that, and trying to, because I honestly feel that if we have a strong desire, just like you're doing, you have a strong desire to serve the mission, Somehow or another, Krishna makes an arrangement that you might be doing what externally looks like a materialistic thing, but internally you feel this is connected to Krishna. And what the world judges externally, that's not who cares in some respect. But Krishna makes arrangements, I feel, I have faith, that he makes the arrangements to reciprocate with our desire to be connected to him. We just have to really desire to do it. And I think that's where Grihastha says, if we assume that as a Grihastha, my life is bound to be disconnected from Krishna, but I'll make it connected during my morning and during my Sundays, we're starting off on the wrong assumption. If we start with the assumption, Krishna is the center, how do I mold my life such that my Grihastha ashram is an ashram? And I am fully dedicating all of my activities to Krishna, and I'm molding my activities so that they contribute to Krishna consciousness. And I think that it's a mindset change, because I think, unfortunately, for some reason, there's this rumor going around, like I said before, that if you want to dedicate your life fully, you have to be in saffron. If you're Grihastha, then you do what you can part-time. That's a nonsense. And we should, I mean, like, just destroy that misconception, because 99% of our community is going to be in the Grihastha ashram. If you feed that bad logic into their minds, I mean, you've lost 99% of the people who could be helping the mission. So I think we have to keep reinforcing this idea that if you are Grihastha, Brahmachari, whatever ashram you're in, your life is dedicated to Krishna, to ISKCON, to Srila Prabhupada's mission. Doesn't matter what ashram you're in. I'm not going to, so I'll pose it as a challenge just for the sake of bringing the point out. Anyone can make the argument that my personal circumstance is more challenging than yours, isn't it? So like, I can make so many arguments that my life is harder than yours, therefore you can be more Krishna conscious than I can. And we can keep saying that to ourselves to excuse the fact that we don't want to do that. But ultimately, regardless of, and you just have to read the Bhagavatam, you just have to read the Chaitanya Charitamrita to see the devotees who are in the Grihastha ashram and to see what they have done for Krishna consciousness, how they've dedicated their life to Krishna consciousness. But if we want to keep feeding ourselves this mistruth to justify our commitment, then that's up to us. So I'm just posing it back to you so you get the point. But it's very easy to do that, but it's just not the truth.
I'll just make the conversation a bit lighter. The question is for anyone, all three of you, but specifically for Braj Bihari Prabhu, because he started this, when Allah eats Rasgulla. The question may itself have no standing, but I just wanted to ask, is vegetarianism an essential principle to achieve love of God or go to spiritual world? Or vice versa, that do meat eaters or people who do not follow the regulated principles, can they make it love of God?
Srila Prabhupada gave a standard formula for love of God, 1.2.6. Savai pumsam paro dharmo eto bhakti radhokshaje ahetukya pratyata yayatma suprasidati. Srila Prabhupada said it doesn't matter which religion. In fact, there's a whole lecture where Srila Prabhupada very emphatically says we are not against Christian, Muslim, we are not against changing religion. It doesn't matter who you are, can you love God from whichever situation you are in. So one can make a beginning from there, but there are rules and regulations which help us in our spiritual practices. So therefore, what our acharyas have given, we follow. And especially for us in ISKCON, we follow these rules of 4 regulative principles and chanting 16 rounds. But in other paths, if they, like Srila Prabhupada, when he would debate with Christian preachers, he would tell them, follow Jesus' teaching. Even in Iran, there are a lot of morning walk conversations where Srila Prabhupada appreciates Prophet Muhammad. Because there are 2 kinds of Islam. Religion, there are 2 aspects. One is the political aspect, one is the spiritual aspect. So we have no problem with the spiritual Islam. I have no problem with spiritual Islam. Because giving charity is very great. That's one of their principles. And 5 times a day prayer. I'm very inspired by that. I wish I could do 5 times, consciously praying to the Lord. So I think spiritual Islam, we have no problems. I think the problem is happening because of the political aspect of it. So, I don't know. See, that's what I'm saying. Every religion, time, place, and circumstances, the Lord sends His messengers, and according to the situation there at that time, so He made some concessions. So, concession is not it's not a license to kill. So, but again, it's preaching. For us, we know we have to be vegetarian and Krishnitarian. We have to offer food to Krishna. But I generally don't discuss this topic with Christians or Muslims, because I've met many Muslims. Like I have very good few Muslim friends. They're non-vegetarians, and they're very pious, God-fearing. Like in our school, Gopal's garden, the carpenter is a Muslim. Javed Bhai is such a nice person, but then he's a non-vegetarian. So, but us, we are practicing Krishna consciousness. We have the highest process. We need to be humble and we need to be prayerful, and this helps. But for them, what they are following, I don't want to interfere in their. So it's like that. See, in what happened with us is, we have Brahmanas who are focusing on the spiritual aspect, and we have Kshatriyas who deal with the political part. Even Jesus Christ was more like a Brahmana; he was like a preacher. And then I think later on kings came and they spread Christianity. Even Buddha was more Brahminical, and Ashoka was a Kshatriya, so he spread Buddhism, right? So in every religion, there is a kind of separation between the spiritual part and the political part. But in Islam, unfortunately, what has happened is Prophet Muhammad played both parts. He played the spiritual part, but he also had political ambitions. So that's what is creating problems. So many of the sincere Muslims, like 1/4 of the population on this planet is Muslim. So definitely, Muslims are not bad, because the fact that the world could have been a much more terrible place. 1 out of 4 human beings are Muslims. So that means that most of them are pious. So we have no problems with that. We are happy. It's just that because he played double role, and sincere Muslims are getting bewildered and they just go crazy. I saw a big rally in Birmingham. Mumbai, we saw that video and I was shocked. More than 10,000 Muslims gathering and they're demanding Sharia law in UK. I was like, what are the British UK devotees doing? I was agitated when I saw that. But it's got nothing to do with spiritual Islam. But regarding non-vegetarianism, I don't know. I don't want to comment. Our Prabhuji, what is his name? Akif Anaf from Turkey. He's a Muslim. He has written 3 books, Bhakti Yoga and Islam and Krishna Consciousness. And he writes about all of this, a lot of quotations from hadiths and all of that, but it's pointless to debate. We know the advantages of vegetarianism and we know how it is good, but that's not a big issue. Is that okay, Prabhu? Hare Krishna.
So maybe if everyone could comment, but when you hear about when Prabhupada was around and sort of the early disciples at that time in the 70s and 80s, and you look at the society now, particularly, I guess, mainly Grahastas is what I'm referring to, but we see that we don't have the same intensity. There's not that, the same urgency is not there of this, okay, one life, everything for Krishna, and not necessarily that we have to do the same things as them, and loads of people dropped out of education for the sake of staying in the ashram and everything, and that was the gold standard at that point as well. Things have changed, But yeah, more around the point of that the same urgency doesn't seem to be there. It seems like we're happy with our 9-to-5 job, Krishna on the side. Like you said, going to the temple on Sunday, you become a patron, and that's my part done. So if you could just comment on that.
I think it's natural that the dynamics are changing. I think it's natural that as ISKCON's become established, etc., that the dynamics of congregation and those things will change. So I don't think that's going to happen. For me, it's not even so much the externals of what is happening in terms of somebody's contribution, but more the spirit of what we feel is our role in society, in the ISKCON society. And there I think that is about education, and I think that is about emphasizing, as I say, the point that the Grihastha ashram is meant to be one of dedication to ISKCON and the movement, just as any other ashram is. I think that's one point, which I think has been, for some reason or another, unfortunately minimized. The importance, just like I was mentioning this point about the importance of the role of the mother. Like that's these things, or like if you didn't make it in Krishna consciousness, then you got married. That kind of mentality, which is a Kanishta mentality, done at a time to maximize the number of people in the ashrams, right? So it was kind of almost like a coercive psychology to get as many people into the ashram as possible, because that's what management leadership needed at the time, hands-on, full-time in the ashram. But there's always a downside to that type of thing. And the downside is that it's created a distance psychologically for grihasthas to feel like they are not full-time devotees. So even when we talk about the congregation, we say, he's a full-time devotee, he's a, we have these terms which unveil our kind of psychology, thinking behind it. And for me, this is problematic. It's problematic for our society because I feel that, clearly grihasthas are more in touch with the material energy than those in saffron are. And those in saffron are there to sometimes give us a bit of a prod to say, look, don't forget the purpose of life, which is their role. But for us to move beyond where we are right now, I feel that we have to emphasize in our communities, in our congregations, in our sanghas, in our mentorship systems, in our processes for initiation, in the messaging that comes through in Bhagavatam class, etc., that a signed-up devotee is a signed-up devotee. Like, we're here to give our life to Krishna consciousness. And how we do that it will be different for everybody. But I do think that there has been a shift. There's been a shift in response to a change in social circumstance for ISKCON. I'm not suggesting that it's in any way desirable or practical to go back to what it was. I think that's because there were some aspects of that which was just unhealthy for lots of reasons. It was an emergency as opposed to, but I do think we have lost our way a bit on that, and I think part of our job is to try and bring it back. And I think now also, just to conclude on this, I also think that the maturity of our leaders has changed. The maturity of those people who are seen as the spiritual leaders in ISKCON, their messaging has changed, because ISKCON has gone through many ups and downs, including the failures of different ashrams. And that has meant that our sannyasis, our gurus, our senior brahmacharis, etc., you can hear it. You can hear it here, right? Where the messaging is very different to what it might have been. So now the grihasthas are being encouraged, but it sometimes takes time to turn that ship. And I think that's, but we have to keep at it.
When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was traveling in South India, then he came to Kurmastan and he met the Kurma Brahmana, a householder. And the householder said, household life is very difficult. There's too many waves, there's too many difficulties, there's responsibilities, there's pressures, there's anxieties. He said, Mahaprabhu, I just want to travel with you. So what did Mahaprabhu say to him? Mahaprabhu said a verse to him that became the most quoted verse by Srila Prabhupada from the Chaitanya Charitamrita in all of his preaching throughout his whole lifetime. Prabhupada quoted this verse again and again, and this is the verse that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told the Kurma Brahmana when the Kurma Brahmana said, household life is very difficult, I just want to be with you. And what did Mahaprabhu tell him? Jare dekha tare kaha Krishna upadesh amara agyaya guru tarahan e desh. He said, whoever you meet, whoever you see, tell them about Krishna. Mahaprabhu didn't tell him to turn his life upside down. He said, stay where you are. Just whoever you see, whoever you speak to, tell them about Krishna. And then in the very next verse, what does he say? Kabu na badibe tomar vishaya taranga punarapiye thani pabe mora sangha. He says, if you follow this one instruction of mine, the waves of materialistic family life won't affect you. You will very soon be with me. Now, I'm not going to give a whole seminar on this, but what's the link? On one hand, he's saying, I got all these problems in my family life, and Mahaprabhu is giving the solution. Everyone you see, everyone you speak to, tell them about Krishna. You say, like, what's the link between that? You could give him some practical advice, say like structure your life. No, he says, everyone you see, everyone you meet, tell them about Krishna. I'm not going to give the answer to that, but everyone should think very, very deeply about that. Why in the world is that the solution? Why is it the solution that if you become focused on helping others, all of your problems will be solved? The greatest leaders in the world see patterns. They make links that other people in the world don't make. Prabhupada made links. He said there's war in the world because people are killing animals. No one made that link. Prabhupada made it. He said everyone's trying to solve this problem here, but the solution is here. We have problems in our family life here, and Mahaprabhu is saying, you know what? The solution's here. And you're thinking, where's the link? There's a link. There's a very deep link. And if we think very deeply about this, you will come to profound conclusions as to why Mahaprabhu's statement that become very concerned about others, and you will immediately see your life changing. And it doesn't mean you have to turn your life upside down. It doesn't mean you have to go kamikaze. It doesn't mean you have to make heavy decisions. Jare dekha, tare kaha, Krishna upadesh. So whoever you meet, become concerned about sharing something good with them and see how life begins to transform.
Actually, Maharaj and Naveen Krishna Prabhu have perfectly answered. It's just that, there's one thing I want to say, because when you said about grahasthas are no longer as intense as they were earlier, that really concerned me, because I have been dealing with congregation and I've seen a lot of devotees, they are doing really good. It's just that they need to, as he rightly said, as Maharaj rightly said, preach a little bit, tell others about Krishna. But instead of feeling adequate, they constantly, see, it's good to feel that you're not doing much, but to think that you are not good or you are not doing intense bhakti, that's not healthy for your grahastha ashram. Because you have responsibilities, and there's lots. See, grahastha ashram principally means, like you have your family, children, and you are attached. And attachment means suffering. So grahastha ashram, there is a lot of suffering anyways. And then suffering, and if you remember Krishna, then there's a lot of purification. And I've seen grahasthas, they're always humble, they want to hear about Krishna. And I can see that attitude is bringing them closer to Krishna, because that suffering is making them very humble. So just be at peace, and there's enough intensity in your life anyways. Like, I'll just give you one example. I was staying with one Grahastha in his house for 3 days. And I saw anything he does, he has an altar. Anything he does, he offers to Krishna. One devotee came and gave me a pen set and gave him also a pen set. And I opened it and I started using it. But I saw him, he took that pen set, he kept it in the altar. And then I asked him, what are you doing? He said, anything I get, I first offer it to Krishna. So he brought a new pair of socks, he first kept it in the altar. Krishna, I want to accept it as prasad. So when he takes his medicines, before taking his medicine, he keeps it in the altar. I said, he knows Krishna doesn't need medicines, but he's just being Krishna conscious. So just be Krishna conscious the way you are. And Grahasthas have their enough anxieties. Because I know it, because I stayed with my mother for 8 months during COVID. And she had serious health issues. And I understood firsthand what is Grahastha life. Of course, I was with my mother, but I saw what it is to manage a house. I saw what it is to take care of a sick person and go to hospital, run around. It was overwhelming, and I barely managed to finish my 16 rounds. And since I came back, my attitude towards Grahastha preaching has changed a lot. You're chanting your 16 rounds, oh, that's a big achievement, Hari Bol. So that intensity, I personally would suggest, we need to improve, definitely, but we also need to feel, we are doing fine. Both is needed. Hare Krishna.
You should round up.
Okay.
I'll come back.
Okay, Hare Krishna. Okay, maybe we have 3 loud Hari Bols and thank the wonderful speakers. And just to say, I know there's never enough time to, answer all these questions, and you have a lot more questions. But tomorrow Raj will talk about, we're trying to create some facilities, particularly for this age group of people, that we can have a regular sangha and we can regularly ask these questions. So we'll get more of that. And please take the opportunity. There's many senior devotees who can always answer all your questions, and please take advantage. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. So we're just going to make a quick announcement before I